Okay, this lesson is called An Angry Brother, and it's talking about David dealing with his brother Eliab. I have to confess in beginning that I never really liked Eliab because Eliab is picking on my hero. David's my hero, and I don't like people that pick on my heroes. But I remember one day somebody made a statement, a preacher said, Eliab did ask some good questions. Man, I never even realized he was asking questions, I was mad at him. I didn't want to listen to it. That's what we usually do when we're angry at them. We don't pay attention to them, don't listen to them. And so that's what this story is about, is David and his angry brother. What do you say to an angry brother? David understood, this is the same day that he's going to kill Goliath, that what was desperately needed here was to hear a word from God. Now, I know there are different English translations of the Greek manuscripts here, but I like the way the King James puts it because I really believe they capture the essence of this. 1 Samuel 17 and 29, where David says, "Is there not a cause?" The way that is translated, a lot of the newer translations say, "Are these not just mere words?" Now, the confusion, the reason that it's translated in the different ways is because of the Greek language here. The Hebrew language. The Hebrew language was a very simple language concerned when you compare it with the Greek. For instance, when the Bible was written, there were like 2,000 Hebrew words. When the Bible was written, there were 5,000 Greek words. So that tells you that the Hebrews had to use some words over and over again for the same thing. And that's what's happening here. They use the word debar, if I remember the way it's pronounced in the Hebrew, but it could be used as a word from God or a word from man. And so that's the confusion. A lot of the modern translations are putting the focus like David's words. I was talking, but that's all. I was just talking. I didn't mean anything. Aren't these just mere words? But I think that is totally missing what David is saying. This word also, debar, can be translated a word from God. And I think that is what he's saying. Is there not a cause? Hasn't anybody heard from God? What is God saying about this? That's really what every one of us need. If we have a word from God, that's where we get faith. That helps us to make the decisions, helps us to do the right things. Without a word from God, we're left like Saul. We're left like Eliab and all these other Israelite soldiers that run and hide because they don't know what God is saying. David did. David had heard from heaven. It's a good statement. For a vision to be effective, it has to be simple enough to be remembered and yet specific enough to give direction. That's a good statement for leadership. It has to be a clear vision, in other words. As I said, when God calls you, he doesn't just call you, go do something. No, he always has something specific in mind that he wants you to do. And that's why we call it obedience. We're obeying God. So for a vision to be effective, it's got to be simple enough to be remembered. But yet it's got to be specific enough to give direction. Israel, under King Saul, is facing a leadership crisis. What are we going to do? There's this giant that is roaring, send me a man to fight. And what are we going to do with this situation? It's a leadership crisis. And Saul is not providing leadership. Or as I say, his weak leadership is no leadership. And he's wanting somebody to go kill the giant, but he doesn't know how to motivate them. He doesn't know how to get them to risk everything to go kill the giant. So he's not providing leadership. The Israelites have lost their sense of purpose, their sense of direction. And once you do that, all is left is just fear and confusion. King Saul, trying to get somebody to go and fight, starts trying to motivate the people. The fear. Fear will motivate you. There's no doubt about it. Fear is one of what we call the prime movers in life. One of the prime motivators. Fear. Fear will, it always causes us to react to it. We're motivated by it. You will do things you did not intend to do when you're scared. Fear will cause you to react to that. But Saul, in the fear that they're having, they're hiding from Goliath. Nobody's willing to go fight. So he tries to overcome the fear with the second prime mover, reward. People do a lot of things for reward. And I give you the symbol here of gold and dollars because a lot of folks will do a lot of things for money. They're motivated by the reward. That's what King Saul tries to do. He tries to get the people to go kill the giant by offering to make them rich. But nobody's willing to risk their life for some money to go kill the giant. The second thing he does, he offers them, you can marry the princess. You can become a prince in Israel. I say every time I look at that, I don't know if you smile or laugh when you read your Bible, but there's some things that are just funny. And every time I read that, I think, wow, she had to be beautiful. Why? Because nobody's going to kill a giant for an ugly woman. I mean, she's got to be beautiful. But it doesn't move anybody. They're not willing to risk their life for the princess. So he offers them the greatest reward he could think of. And this tells me that King Saul at heart was a politician. Because the third thing he said, if you'll kill the giant, your family will be free from paying any more taxes. No taxes. That tells you he's a politician at heart, because that's the greatest reward that he can think of. And yet, nobody's willing to risk their life because of his rewards. Money, become the prince in Israel, marry the princess, or to be free from paying any more taxes. Nobody is willing to move for that. But there's a third motivator. It's love. Love is the third prime mover in life, and that's what David had. It wasn't what Saul was promising that motivated David. It was his love for God. Because of his love for God, he's willing to risk everything. Do you understand that's what Jesus did? Greater love hath no man than this, than a man lay down his life for his friends. That's what motivated Jesus. He was motivated by love. He loved us so much that he gave himself for us. That's what David has. David has this great love for God. Now, the thing that makes love different from fear, from reward, is because love comes from the inside of us. It's what we call intrinsic. It comes from within us. Fear, reward, comes from outside us. It's what they call extrinsic, outside of us. But love comes from within. Therefore, love is the greatest of all motivations. That's what David has. David's love for God, his devotion for God, is what brings him to the point he's willing to risk his life to kill the giant. Now, again, you and I, we know the end of the story. David didn't know how it was going to turn out. David did not know how God was going to do it. I believe he had faith that God's going to make this good, but there's always the risk that is involved in faith. You don't know how God is going to do it. David doesn't know that. All David knows is it doesn't matter how it turns out. I'm willing to give my life for God. I hope you're listening to me. I think it's one of the greatest things that we have lost in the United States is that so many people claim to be Christian, but it's only a name. It's culture. Sometimes it comes back to family. But as far as willing to risk their life, I remember I've spent a lot of my time in ministry in southern Mexico in the state of Chiapas. And just a few years ago, Chiapas was the most dangerous place in Mexico because of the Zapatista uprising. They were trying to overthrow the state and turn it into a socialistic nation, separate from Mexico, and it was very, very dangerous. I'd have a lot of Mexicans tell me not to go. You don't want to be foolish. This is not, God doesn't need any dead heroes. That's not going to accomplish anything. But on the other hand, has God called you? Is this God's will for you? And I knew it was a part of my life. And so we take a lot of precautions, do things. I used to ride buses, for instance. And my friends, the pastors there would tell me, don't get on a bus. It's not like it was. You can't do that. Somebody will kill you. And so I submit to that, okay? I won't ride the bus. How can I get there? And how can we do this? And you've got to be willing to take the risk. And you'll find out if God really has called you, if you're willing to do that. Again, I'm not talking about doing foolish things here, but I'm just simply saying, are you willing to put it all on the line for Christ? What are you willing to give? David was willing to die, if necessary, rather than have this giant shame Jehovah. He wasn't going to permit it. It came from his love from God. Now, let's talk about some good questions here. The questions I never paid any attention to before my friend pointed out. Eliab did ask some good questions. Eliab asked David 3 different things. Actually, the third one is a statement, but we'll turn it into a question for context here. The first question he asked him, why are you here? Now, that's a good question for you to ask. Why are you here? Well, I'm here because my friend is. No, that's not good enough. Why are you here? Well, this is my church. No, that's not good enough. Why are you here? Well, my parents said this would be a... No. Why are you here? See, David understood that life is not an accident looking for a place to happen. So many people go through life like that. They don't know why they're here. They don't know where they're going. Then what difference does it make? What difference does it make? If you don't know where you're going, if you don't know what's going on, then the first thing you need to do is spend time alone with God and answer the question, what is God's will for my life? Again, I am so glad I discovered that when I was a boy. I discovered the purpose, why I was born, why I'm here. God needed a preacher. And so I'm the answer to God's call. I'm the answer to God's will. I'm doing what God wants me to do. That helps you to accomplish things you could never accomplish alone. Why are you here? David knew why he was here. And he answers the question, I am here because my father sent me. Boy, that's powerful. And you can read this if you go into verse 17, where David's father Jesse calls and said, I want you to go down and take this gift to the military commander and check on your brothers, see how they're doing, and bring me a report back. David didn't do this just because that sounds like something fun. That you're not going to kill giants just because it sounds like fun. You're not going to kill giants just because, well, somebody said, no. You got to be here because your heavenly Father has sent you. And if you know you're doing God's will, nothing else really matters. It will all work out in time if you're doing God's will. That's what David said. I'm here because my Father sent me here. The second thing he can say, I'm not here for myself. I'm here for your welfare. I'm here to check on you, see how you are doing. It's well said that if you want to be successful in life, then devote your life making others successful. The people that do that best are the people that become very successful, very rich, very powerful. It's my whole philosophy for ministry. My philosophy for ministry is very basic. I just simply try to figure out what level are they on? Where are they? And then help them take the next step. If I can do that, I have succeeded. Because their success becomes my success. See, I spend my time going around the world teaching, training pastors, and in doing so, I don't care if they think I'm a good preacher. What difference does it make? It doesn't matter if their people ever even hear my name. But it's very important they think their pastor's a good preacher. So if I can help him succeed, if I can help him take the next step, then his success is my success. That's what David did. David's saying, I didn't come for me. I came for you. I'm here to serve you, to help you, and to bring this from our Father, and he wants me to bring him a report. How are you doing? What's going on? Boy, David could answer the question, why are you here? The second thing that Eliab says, and he's saying, have you been faithful? Now, the way he put it was, he said, with whom did you leave those few sheep in the wilderness? Nobody can put you down like an elder brother can. They've had more practice, more experience. So Eliab he's giving his brother a hard time. His pride has been wounded, and he's saying, with whom did you leave those few sheep in the wilderness? Basically, this is his question. Have you been faithful? Faithfulness. David can answer the question. Faithfulness is learned in the little things. Not the big things. It's the little things. Were you faithful in picking up the paper off the floor? Were you faithful in greeting people at the door and making them feel welcome? The little things. Jesus said it this way. Well done, good and faithful servant. You have been faithful over a few things. I will make you ruler over many things. Faithfulness is learned in those little things. It's a story that relates to this. They tell it from Paducah, Kentucky, about a young man that was to be hired by a bank. And he had already been interviewed, and they had approved him that, yes, we're going to give him the job. And the president of the bank invites him to go out. Let's go out for lunch together, and we'll come back and finish finalizing everything. And they go to a cafeteria, and as they're going through the line, he notices the young man takes a little patty of butter and slipped it under his plate so the cashier would not see it. I believe they said it only cost like 2 cents for the patty of butter. But he notices the young man takes that and slips it under the plate so that he won't be charged the 2 cents. The banker excuses himself, said, I've just had something come up. I've got to go back. I'll see you in a little bit. He goes back to the office. He calls in his men, tells them what he saw. The young man lost the job that he had already been approved for a 2-cent patty of butter, because the president said, if he will steal 2 cents from the cafeteria, he will steal from our bank. Boy, That is true. It's the little things where faithfulness is learned. David could say, though, I have been faithful. I have done what you have asked me to do. Faithfulness. He said, I have kept my father's sheep. I have watched after them and provided for them. Have you done what your father asked you to do? If you've done so, if you have learned faithfulness. The second thing he says, you don't have to worry about those few sheep because I left them in the hands of another keeper. I left them with them. And so you don't have to worry about those, Eliab. Those few sheep are in good hands. Now here's the third question that David asks, that Eliab is asking David. He says, did you come to watch? Now again, I am putting that in paraphrase to be within context because actually what Eliab did, he accused David of this. He says to David, I know your pride. That really wasn't true. It was Eliab's pride that had been offended, not David's. It was Eliab's. But here's what I've discovered. People will accuse you of what they are guilty. I've seen that so many times in life. That the people that make the accusation against you are actually guilty of that. That's what's happening here with Eliab. Eliab's pride has been wounded because of David's statements. When David says, I have come to see you, to take care of you. Eliab is offended by this. His pride is wounded. And when he accuses David of, you come to watch, you want to ask the question, watch? Watch what? He said, you come down to watch the battle. What battle? There isn't any battle taking place. For 40 days, this giant has come out and roared, send me a man to fight. And all the Israelites are run and hide. You call that a battle? That's not a battle. No fight going on here. But because of his wounded pride, he's accusing David of coming down to watch the battle. David says, I did not come to watch. I come to get involved. I come to see what I can do to help you. Now, the people that do that best are the people that are most successful in life. As I said, David didn't even know there was a giant there until he got there. David didn't know what was taking place. There was no way, they can communicate with cell phones and iPhones. And no. He has to get there to find out what's taking place. And when he does, he realizes they were just running and hiding from the giant. Now, the Bible doesn't record this, but I can assure you it's very true. The Bible doesn't say it, but every day the giant came back, he came back a little bit bigger. He keeps growing. And that's the way it is with the giants in our life. The things that we face in life, they're not just going to go away on their own. They're not just going to disappear. They're going to keep coming back again and again and again. And we've got to learn to deal with that. We've got to challenge that. It's well said, abusive people will continue to abuse you until you stop them. At some point, somebody's got to stand up and say, enough. We're not going any farther. That's what David does with the giant. David goes to meet the giant, and the challenge that he gives is tremendous. Actually, what he began to do, we would say today, he began to prophesy to the giant. I've heard people prophesy, in church and prophesy in prayer meetings, but David's prophesying to the giant. I am going to, he said, you come against me with a sword and a spear, but I come to you in the name of the Lord of hosts. I'm going to smite you and take your head from you. How's he going to do it? He doesn't have a knife. He doesn't have a sword. How's he going to take the giant's head? The giant's got a sword that he's not using right now. He still has it in his sheath. And David intends to borrow Goliath's sword long enough to cut off the giant's head. Wow. This young man just amazes me. The kind of faith, the confidence that he had, what he's willing to risk because of his relationship with God. The giant comes running toward David, and David runs toward the giant, throws a rock, hits him in the forehead. The giant falls down. David runs up, draws the giant's sword out of its sheath, cuts off his head. I mean, it doesn't get any better than that. If you're a warrior, that's the ultimate. And he's able to do this because David knew his purpose. He knew who he was. He knew why he was here. Now, this is where a lot of people miss this story. It's down toward the end of this story. Let me just check my reference here. So I'll have the exact verse for you. Chapter 17 and down around verse 46, I believe it is. Check my reference quickly. Yes, this is where he's prophesying to him. You come to me with a sword and spear, verse 45. But I come to you in the name of the Lord. Verse 46, this day God will deliver you into my hand, and I will strike you and smite you and take your head from you. At the end of verse 46, he said, this day I will give the carcasses of the camp of the Philistine to the birds of the air and the wild beasts of the earth, that all the earth may know. Now pay attention to what he's saying. David's purpose is not in killing a giant. That's what happens to so many people. So many people get caught up in the battle. They get caught up in the fight, and they think, that's why God has anointed me. That's why God called me. No, God didn't call him to kill giants. God called him to be king of Israel. The giant was simply a problem. Here, David gives us his purpose, that all the earth may know there is a God in Israel. Now, what is your purpose? In dealing with pastors and churches for so many years, I discovered pastors in the United States. Do you know the time when most pastors resign their churches? Within 1 year after a major building project. The majority of pastors that resign, that's the time they do it. Why? Why would they resign after building a great building? Because they get their purpose confused with the building. The building is simply a tool. It's not God's purpose. No, the purpose ought to be like David said, that all the earth may know there is a God in Israel. If that is your purpose, that's the thing that keeps me going. That's the thing that motivates me continually. I want to see people come to Christ. I want to see people come to know God. There's a world that's dying that doesn't know Jesus. Isn't somebody going to do something about the giant? That's what motivates me. That's the fire that burns within me. David's purpose was that all the earth may know there is a God in Israel. The second part of it's the next verse. He says in verse 47, he said, then all this assembly shall know that the Lord does not save with sword and spear. For the battle is the Lord's, and he will give you into our hands. In other words, victory doesn't come because we're great warriors. Victory doesn't come. No, victory comes from God. Thanks be unto God that gives us the victory through our Lord Jesus Christ. David understood that. The battle belongs to the Lord. Now, I challenge you with this today. I challenge you with, what is your purpose for life? See, we can mock and make fun of people like some of the Green Force people that I read these stories about them chaining themselves to the great trees, the great cedar and the great redwoods, so that they can't cut them down, or they'll climb up and they'll live for 6 months in the top of a redwood tree so they can't cut it down. And or they learn about a little beetle that they didn't even know that even existed before, and they thought it was extinct, and now they discovered the beetle, and they'll go out and camp on the grounds to keep them from disturbing the habitat of the beetle. We listen to those stories a lot of times to smile, laugh, make jokes. At least they have a purpose. They have something they're willing to fight for. What are you willing to fight for? What is your purpose? That's what's motivating David. That's what causes him to do what he does. He's not just doing something. No, he has a purpose. I want the whole world to know there's a God in Israel. Do you understand? That is my purpose. My purpose is I want the whole world to know there is a God in the church. His name is Jesus Christ. I want everybody to know that. And until everybody knows that, I cannot rest. How can I rest when people are going to hell? How can I rest when? Do you really believe there is a hell? I tell you, those things, they torment me. I've got to find a way to kill the giants so they can know there's a God in Israel. Secondly, they've got to know these armies, both the Israelites and the Philistine army, must know victory is a gift from God. It doesn't come from us. The battle belongs to the Lord. It's not my battle. It's not your battle. It's God's battle. When you know that, that keeps you going. That keeps the fire burning. Now, you're young. You got a lot of youthful energy, a lot of youthful zeal. As you get older, you don't have as much energy. That's one of the things when I was young, I used to think a lot of folks were lazy. Now I'm a little older and wiser, and I realize they weren't lazy, they were tired. I didn't know the difference. I thought they were lazy. But now I've reached the point, where he said, old men shall dream dreams. How can you dream dreams if you don't take a nap? You got to take a siesta or you can't dream a dream. Old men shall dream dreams. When I was young, man, I thought anybody go take a nap. Why do they want to sleep? I mean, you could be doing something. And one of my great joys was, I as a young preacher, I'd preach in this city, and then I'd drive all night to the next town and preach the next morning in the next town. To me, that was the ultimate. I mean, I'm really living. Today I try to do that, I'd never even get there. I'd go to sleep at the wheel, or if I got there, I'd be so drugged I wouldn't know what I was doing. The battle with energy, you don't have it. What keeps you going? What motivates you? What's a fire inside of you? You got to have a purpose. My purpose is I want the whole world to know that Jesus Christ is Lord. I want the whole world, I want every Christian to understand God is the one that gives us the victory. We can't win it on our own. Only God can do it for us. Now, that's what David is doing here. And because David had a purpose, because he understood his purpose, he was able to kill the giant. It was just another problem, another bump in the road. Just something you got to deal with in life. But my purpose is I want the whole world to know there's a God in Israel. Wow. When I began to see this in David's life, I was able to say, that's how he was able to do it. That's why he ran to the giant instead of running and hiding. And so, may God help us to become giant killers. May God help us to deal with the angry brothers. You're never going to kill giants while you're fussing with your brother. You just got to let it go. And that's what David did. And because he did it and did it right, God used him to become not only the giant killer, but the next king of Israel.